I'm wondering if I should even bring it up. I kind of want to stand up just so I
Please.
see the people that I'm talking to. I've been I'm not sure if I'm stuck on it or not, but there's a study that was written some time ago in 1991. It's called Generations, A History of America's Future. I wonder if anybody's heard of it. That actually it's a study in cyclical history, and the authors actually say it's Anglo-American, no, what's the, Anglo-Saxon. Anglo-Saxon history. Then comes out of Northern Europe and then came into the New World. And they've shown the cycles happening 3 times in Europe before coming, or 4 times in Europe before coming into the New World, and happening 3 times here. As far as considering crises periods, first crisis being the War of Independence for the country, for the new nation, and then we had the Civil War, and then this last major crises was the twin emergencies of the Great Depression and World War II. And so it's showing these cycles happening between about 80 and 100 years. 1929 was 82 years ago. So that's why they have this, and the study has this time period as showing us already we're in a crisis period, which you might think that maybe 2001, the 9/11 tragedy could have started, could have got us, and then of course 2008 is pretty drastic what happened there. So we're in that kind of 20-year cycle. So, but it's also a work of generations, where the generations contribute to these historical turnings. To speak of just the crises period is just to speak of the crises period. He talks of 4 turnings, 4 historical turnings that happened to us, to our society. And I'm trying to get to a point, but I have to explain a little bit first. If you start with the crises for the system that he speaks of for our society here in America, if you start with the crises, it doesn't stay crises forever. It goes to a period of prosperity, considered just the prosperity after World War II. But then the prosperity doesn't last forever either, and you go into what this country has seen as a spiritual awakening for a time, but that doesn't last long either, and it goes into an unraveling. And then from the unraveling, it goes back to the crisis period. So you go to crises, prosperity, spiritual awakening, to the unraveling, back to the crises again. And that's what all these 4 times in Europe and 3 times in America have shown. And so if that's happening again, and then it shows how the generations contribute to each of these turnings. And one thing I believe that it's showing is that these generations are archetypes. We see ourselves again in this process of history. And so the archetype, the GI generation is considered a civic generation. And so what they did is that they subdued the crises for us in this country anyway, and which eventually helped to solve the crises in the rest of the world. And so what we have now, if we're going to get as great a problem as the War of Independence, Civil War, and those twin emergencies, if we're in that period again, according to these authors, this civic archetype is supposed to solve our problem, which this civic archetype is now the millennial generation that's coming through, those born between 1982 and 2004. That again is that archetype, the G.I. Joe generation. Well, they're supposed to subdue the crises. If it's supposed to hit us as severe as those 3 that I mentioned, we haven't asked our generation to solve anything that great yet, which might mean that the full effect of what's coming our way now isn't here yet, which you might be sensing as, will we survive the 21st century? So my thinking has been that if this is going to have it's play. If it's going to play out like this, how can we mitigate circumstances up until, because this works in cycles, you can probably see the math in there, that they're saying that this crisis period can last till 2026. And it shouldn't last any longer than that.
Yes.
How it's operated in this last 7 times. And so if we could figure out how to, first of all, identify what's going to hit us as hard as those last 3 times here in this nation. And so that's what I've been kind of thinking, that we survive through the ashes, I guess, is what, there's a saying or something
Yeah.
like that.
Sure.
You're analytical, of course, but I thought I'd just kind of say that in case that kind of helps anybody to.
No, that's true, sir. What you're pointing out is how humanity has been led by social forces and historical forces and molded. And you can see that in every civilization. It's the Roman civilization, it rose to a pinnacle and then degenerated and then disappeared more or less. And the same thing happened to the Egyptian civilization, and the same thing happened to the Hindu civilization. So when you talk of these social forces, which sociologists and so on study, then on a mass scale that is true, because the whole of humanity is being simply led by circumstances and forces. And that's how it develops. If there is too much prosperity, it brings in laziness. And so there is bound to be degeneration. So the only thing, all those things are true, what they point out. The question is, can a human being break from this cycle? Or are we completely slave to this cycle? If you accept the cycle, there is nothing to be done. We are part of that cycle. And that cycle will lead wherever it leads. And no individual can do anything. But is that true? Or do we have the intelligence and the creativity to stand apart and say, I'm not going to be influenced by this. I have seen the effect of this influence, and I will not be influenced by this. Individuals have this capacity, but we have not encouraged this capacity in the individual, because 99.9% of the people are simply led and they are conforming, they are becoming like everybody else in society, accepting whatever is laid in front of them. And therefore those social forces which you talk about, they are not wrong. Those sociologists and this analysis which you gave is correct of how civilizations build and how they decay. That's true. But the only possibility of getting out of that cycle is for a human being has the capacity to use his intelligence and stand apart from it. That is wisdom. I mean, after all, Socrates stood apart from the rest. Jesus Christ stood apart from all the Jews. The Buddha stood apart from all the Hindus. But majority of the Hindus, they become Hindus only. And they just follow the same system from father to son. But the Buddha had something different. Krishnamurti had something different. If he had just become president of the Theosophical Society, then it would be the normal course of the cycle, right? But this capacity in a human being to break away and stand apart, to dissent from what is happening in society, we need to value that, dissent, and encourage that in education and so on. So that's one thing which we should discuss in the day we are discussing education, that if education is to bring about a change in paradigm in society, then it must begin with the paradigm in the individual. And the individual is capable of breaking from the paradigm and not just becoming an instrument to the continuation of the same paradigm. That's what intelligence really means. It's the same in science. I mean, Galileo broke away from Aristotle and all the previous 2,000 years, and that's how science progressed. But there, they have valued inquiry, they have valued dissent, they have valued doubt, they have valued questioning. in society we have not valued these things. We have not created a learning mind, we have created a conforming mind. So the Jewish children are Jewish children, and the Indian children are Indian, and so on. Very identifiable. That's what I meant by inertia in society. So all the divisions, everything just continues just the same, because you and I continue just the same, but are we slave to that? Or can we rise above that? And if so, how? And can we help in education bring about this change in society? Because ultimately, unless the individual changes, society doesn't change. And the only possibility of an individual changing, that's where he is formed, in education. Education, not only the courses in schools and colleges, but the way children are brought up in a home, the whole town, everything educates the child. So it's a complex question. I said earlier that there are no simple solutions, but the understanding of the problem itself is the possibility of a solution. So just because it's a complex problem, one needs to understand that complex problem. Otherwise, with partial understanding, a mind is not clear, and that unclear mind takes decisions and adds to the confusion. So first you have to understand that whole thing that is going on, see whether that is inevitable, and if necessary, get out of it. Yes, sir.
Yes, you bring up a quite interesting point, really, because if there are some behaviors or some feelings that people can have that are innate, in other words, we have them out of the box, we don't have to learn them from anybody.
Yes.
That's one thing. I mean, there are some innate feelings that we have. For instance, have you ever put your hand in a fire and kept it there?
Yeah.
Have you?
Put your hand in the fire?
Yeah.
Inadvertently, everybody has done it.
Well, have you kept your hand in the fire?
Caught my hand in the
Have
fire?
you just left your hand in
No.
the fire? Why is that?
Wait, it's
Because
so
you
clear.
learn-
It's so clear.
Because it hurts.
It hurts.
It's going to hurt you. So that's
That's
an
right.
innate feeling that we have.
That's right.
Right. For instance, anger actually is not an innate feeling. It's a learned behavior. And we learn it very early on, I've discovered. And then it becomes a habit.
Yes.
So there are some things, I think, if we could focus on what's innate. For instance, kindness is innate in each one of us.
Yeah.
Compassion is innate.
Yes.
Love is innate.
Yes.
And so without being optimistic or pessimistic,
Yeah.
I think the hope that we can have is that within these innate feelings that we have. And just to focus on that. And to me, if we do that, that transforms everything.
Yes.
There's your transformation right there. A little bit of kindness goes a long way.
Yeah.
And people just, they just want to be left alone to practice their religion, to practice their beliefs, just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
And have enough to eat and enough, there's plenty of food. We're not over, 200 years ago, what was the concern in this country? Same one I just heard tonight, overpopulation. It's just a total myth, it's ridiculous. There's plenty of food to go around even today. It's just that in some places, like in Nepal, where they deforested the mountains, there wasn't enough food growing, people starved for various reasons.
Yes.
But we've got the means to get the food to where the people need it
Yeah.
today, if we want to.
Yeah.
This is not a problem.
No.
It's not a problem.
No.
So you can agree with me on that, but you can also agree with the other guy. I mean, you're one of these guys that agrees with everybody.
No, not
But,
agree with everybody.
it's
What
like-
is true? You see, you have to see what is
I
true
think
and
you
what
didn't
is
mention, this lady mentioned the word hope. You see, you haven't mentioned that. I find that very interesting because you're trying to be neutral.
Yes.
But actually you're sitting here really because you have enormous hope. You must have. You must have enormous hope to be sitting here and hope that what you're doing is going to have a positive impact.
So-
and I think it's that hope that really is propelling us forward.
I said neither pessimism nor optimism, because usually in order the desire to be optimistic creates all kinds of illusions, a romantic feeling of well-being and all that, and one feels hopeful that I am progressing, and that's not necessarily the truth. No? And similarly, if you start feeling depression and feeling that, oh, things are going badly and so on, this is a psychological game our own mind plays. It's like saying, how would I answer the question whether I have been fortunate in life or unfortunate in life? I was born someplace, I was brought up in a family, I had a certain amount of education, certain amount of money, I am living in a particular way. Am I fortunate or unfortunate? That depends on how does the mind answer that question. It will compare. It decides who to compare with, it decides what to compare about, and it decides whether it passes itself or fails itself. So it's just a game which the mind plays. It's like saying, is 50 a big number or a small number? The answer is, it's bigger than 49, smaller than 51, right? So if I compare myself with people who are much poorer or have much less of what I'm wanting, then I feel I'm very fortunate in life. And if I compare myself with other people who have more of what I'm wanting, then I feel depressed. And I feel that I don't have, they have everything, and so on. So that's just a psychological, both the depression and the optimism are just a game which our own mind plays with itself. The facts are that you have this much money, you have this house, you have this knowledge, this thing. Without comparison, it's neither unfortunate nor fortunate. That question cannot be answered. Am I fortunate that I am 74 years old or I am unfortunate? That depends on, if you want to be young, then it's unfortunate. And if you think that it's better not to be 90-year-old, then you feel good about it. So it's all relative and it's all up in the mind. So that's why I said being just factual.
But what's in your heart? You know, if that's in your mind, I can accept that. Because I have many thoughts and I don't trust many of them.
No, the heart, my heart has the same as what you mean.
What do you feel grateful for in this life? Do you feel grateful for the breath that's coming into you every day, every moment of every day? Is that something that will be there till the very last moment of your life? You know, it doesn't matter what age you are, that breath comes in and gives you life.
No,
Are you grateful for that, or are you just ignorant about that?
No. One is grateful for everything that you mentioned earlier as innate. The capacity to love, the capacity to have compassion, the capacity to be friends, the capacity to be happy, to be peaceful. One is grateful for all that because that capacity is not something I have bought in the market or I have created. Nature has given me this capacity innately. But as you rightly pointed out, the anger is a learned thing, or it has a certain cause within us. So the hatred has a cause, and therefore that cause can be eliminated, the hatred can be eliminated. And when hatred is eliminated, love flowers. Because love is innate, compassion is innate, but it's destroyed by the hatred. And the hatred comes from this division and so on, which the mind has accepted.
Well, I have to take exception with that completely.
Yes, you do.
Completely opposite.
Yeah.
My feeling is that when someone feels love, hatred's eliminated. It's completely opposite to what you're saying. When you feel kindness in your life, there's no hatred.
No.
It's like, you know, the light in the dark room, you know. Does darkness really exist? No, it doesn't. Because when you switch the light on or light a candle, the darkness disappears. So, hatred is just a function of ignorance.
Yes.
And I think that...
Therefore it can be eliminated, is what I'm saying.
And it can be eliminated, yeah, but if you focus on the elimination, forget it. But if you just focus on switching the light bulb on, and you just focus on feeling love and kindness, feeling happiness, feeling fulfillment, then hatred automatically goes away. It's just like putting the light on the roof. You know, if you try and fight hatred and anger, you know what happens? The hatred
I
and
understand.
anger just get
but
more and more
all
strong.
religions, I'm just trying to not argue with you, but point out
I wish
something
you
that
would, it'd make it interesting.
no, all religions have advocated that. Look at Christianity itself. It has said, love your neighbor. Do you think that Christians are able to love their neighbor by deciding? Can you love your neighbor by deciding? So it doesn't come from decision. No? So what destroys it? If I am
Well, hang on a minute. Christianity actually says, love your neighbor as yourself.
Yes.
Okay, you forget that bit. Because
Okay.
if you don't love yourself, you can't love your neighbor. That's a fact. You know?
Yes.
It's a fact. I've lived long enough, I've known that fact for many years, because I tried to love my neighbor many times, and there are lots of neighbors that I really don't love very much, you know, and find it hard to love my neighbor, right? Especially when they're such a pain in the ass, and some of them are, right? But,
No,
but the thing is, I have a fundamental
But so long as-
appreciation of life and who I am. And I love the life that I have. I'm not saying my personality or my ego or all of that, but I feel grateful for the life that I have. It's like, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to go into some kind of...
No, Ulrich is
diatribe,
pointing the clock at me.
just
That's
the appreciation.
he's
of
saying
beauty,
it's 10
for
minutes
instance.
past 9. Ulrich is
Why do
pointing.
you have those flowers next to you? Because they're beautiful and we appreciate that. That is not a learned behavior. You know, they smell nice. We like that. You know, there's so many things to celebrate in life. You know? And I think if we do more celebrating and more appreciating and more loving and more being more kind, that's what's going to bring about this transformation. Really. I'm not trying to make the last word by any means. Maybe I am, I don't know.
No, but
I didn't even want to speak actually because I was quite happy to hear
why
other
not?
people's
No, sir,
views,
we are
but-
here to discuss, so you have every right to speak. Not that, but it's nice also to differ, no? Because that gives us something to think about and not just carry on with one's own ideas. Mine as well as yours. So, what I want to say is, so long as the mind is measuring, like you said that some of the neighbors are so lousy and so on, therefore, so long as I am judging them and so long as my like and dislike comes out of it, it's not possible to love. And therefore one has to learn to free oneself of this measurement and comparison and condemnation if it has to become a reality that love your neighbor. And therefore one would have to learn about all this, which is self-knowledge, which is ultimately learning for oneself what is true and what is false, and not simply saying, I must cultivate love, without knowing even what really love means. How do you know what love is? You know, sir,
Do you know what love is? I mean, because you're posing all the questions, but you're not actually saying that you have any experience at all. I'm sure you do. I'm sure you know these things, but you keep saying, and the question is, and I find that very interesting because, you know, maybe it's a Krishnamurti thing, and I'm not a Krishnamurti person.
Yeah.
You know, he never really resonated with me.
Yeah.
I read him years ago, you know, when I was very young. Respect him, of course. But, you know, why do you keep doing this? Because it's like there are simple things that we have. Love and kindness. Simple things that we all understand. It's very, very simple. I love those flowers, but guess what? When those flowers wilt, I'm going to shove them in the compost bin.
But sir, the terrorism, Bin Laden says, I love Islam, and it is in the love of Islam that I am killing these people.
No, well,
No, be careful. Therefore, love word has been so distorted.
no,
Used
not
to
by
be-
me.
No, not by
Okay, and this is what I'm
not
concerned
saying
about, what I feel. You've said it many times tonight. It's up to each one of us.
Yeah.
So why keep talking about Bin Laden and all these people? I don't care about those people. If they're ignorant and they're stupid, good luck to them. As long as they leave me alone. You know? It's when they don't leave you alone. You have to look at the reasons why Bin Laden was attacking people. You know, what are the root causes of these conflicts? You know, they don't just happen in a vacuum. You know, unkindness the way people treat one another has consequences.
Yes.
And those consequences, that's why those people are behaving in that way. They don't want to go out and kill
But if
people.
innately they are kind, as you said, then why is he unkind? We don't answer that. We'll
Well, look, you
continue.
know, my
it.
mother comes from Palestine. She's dead now, a long time ago. You know, I was brought up with this whole Israel-Palestine thing, which you mentioned,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And you posed the question, when will it ever be solved?
Yes.
Well, it will never be solved until people really sit down and say, look, we have love in our hearts, you have love in our hearts, forget the differences. Let's celebrate the differences. You know, you like coffee, I like tea. So what?
Mm.
You know, you have your tea, I love my coffee. Or whatever. You know, let's celebrate that.
Yeah.
But let's live in harmony, in peace. Let's not kill one another.
Quite
How
right.
about that?
To be able to see differences as only differences and not turn them into division,
Yeah.
that needs a lot of
No, it doesn't.
understanding
It's,
in this.
it's, it's
Simple.
just utterly simple.
Okay.
Utterly
Maybe we should end it here because I think.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I
You're
really,
welcome.
thank you.
Thank you.